So this is the third video of helping you understand reports from nationally normed instruments. And so this one is on the Collegiate Learning Assessment Plus. The CLA Plus is one of the more talked about assessments in higher ed. If you've read or heard about the 2011 book, Academically Adrift, it was focusing on some of the data from this and from the NESE as well. So it's been heavily talked about. What's different for this one compared to the other two that we looked at, the NESE and the SSI, is that this is an actual direct assessment of student learning. So we're actually seeing how they perform in terms of writing, critical thinking, analyzing, problem solving in those areas. They actually have to perform on this particular assessment. So this is it's a 90-minute assessment, the maximum amount of time that they have, and 60 minutes is devoted to the performance writing task. And so will get 3 scores based off of this: analysis and problem solving score, a writing effectiveness score, and a score on writing mechanics. And then of course just an overall score on the performance writing task. And then there's the selected response items or questions, and they're like very high-end multiple choice questions. Basically, they are very well constructed items. And so from this, you have 3 different scales: the scientific and quantitative reasoning, critical reading and evaluation, and critique and argument sections then as well. So for this particular instrument, it costs a little more. It's certainly a lot more work in terms of recruiting students to take it. But the advantage of it is that you're getting, again, performance data. You're getting to compare your students, how they perform in these different areas compared to other institutions. For an institution like Bethel, the CLA Plus helps us address 3 of our gen ed outcomes related to writing, related to scientific and quantitative reasoning, and related to critical thinking. So it ends up being an important assessment for us related to our general education. So I want to quickly just go through the performance task, really because it's the gem of this instrument. And it's when you show it to employers, when you show it to faculty, everybody says, yes, this is what we want college students when they come out of college. We want them to be able to have these skills. And so the writing example is that they're put into a real world scenario. They're given 60 minutes to this. So to an example one, there's a bunch of these different performance tasks, these scenarios to go through. But an example might be that the student is asked to advise the mayor on a crime reduction strategies and evaluate 2 potential policies. So one, either to invest in a drug treatment program or to put more police on the street. And so then the students are given a document library, and they're given several different pieces of information. So one might be they might get a memo from a private investigator, and they have to read through that memo and sift through that information. They'd get some crime statistics as well. So again, the quantitative side, can they pick up, can they read a chart, can they understand that, can they get things like correlation and causation issues. They'll be given a data table to look through. So in this case, one provided by the police department. Can they interpret that and understand that information? A news story from the local newspaper related to local drug-related crime. A research brief summarizing scientific study on the effectiveness of drug treatment programs. A chart. As well, so can they understand a chart, understand in this particular example, I know it would be related to, can you get correlation and causation types of issues. And then maybe an internet search, looking at other studies evaluating drug treatment. You have all of this, and so you have all these data to work through, these documents to sift through, and so they work through this. They try to process all this information, use their critical thinking, analytic reasoning, problem-solving skills, written communication skills, and put everything together to try to craft a reasoned, reflective argument. And so they're expected to evaluate the evidence, looking at what information is good information, what's not helpful information, what's fact and what's opinion, what are limitations of some of the evidence, can they pick up on some of the deception or holes in the arguments of others, can they analyze and synthesize the evidence, so have their own analysis of the data, break down the evidence into its components, drawing connections between sources of data, and then attending to the contradictory, or maybe, hey, there just isn't good enough information. I don't have enough information to work with here. So that's what the performance task is like. Again, faculty, when I show it to faculty, they agree. Yes, we want people, our students to be able to do these kinds of things. These are the types of liberal arts skills that we care about students having. And again, for employers, when they see it, they definitely feel that way about it as well. So here are the CLA plus percentiles, a report that you would get from the CLA plus, and you'll see down the left-hand side there, you've got the total CLA plus score, performance task score, selected response question, and then their academic entering ability. So they ask us to provide for them either SAT or ACT scores for the students. And then, so you'll see we just had first-year students and seniors take it. That's usually what most institutions will do. They give you a mean score, and so the mean score is basically on like the SATs norming. So of mean of 1,000, standard deviation of 200, typically of what you see off of it. And so you'll see the first year scores and the senior scores off of that. And then the standard deviation there for the students at our institution. And then you'll see the 25th percentile score and the 75th percentile score. They provide that for you just to kind of give you a sense of what's called the interquartile range. So the middle 50% of where students would score. And then the piece that I think most people understand best, they'll give you the mean percentile rank. So for our first year students, it was at the 74th percentile, and then for our seniors, it was at the 86th percentile. So that means that Bethel as an institution, their seniors on the whole scored 86%, scored higher than 86% of the seniors at other institutions. And then you also see in the last column the effect size. And so this is the effect size versus comparing seniors to freshmen, to first-year students. And so that effect size is 0.86. And so if you remember in one of the other videos, we were talking about effect sizes. Again, that's just what's that mean difference. So that mean difference between Bethel seniors of 1206 and Bethel freshmen of 1098, that'd be 112. And that would just be divided by that standard deviation there of 131, and that would give us 0.86. That's really a large effect size. That's one of the larger effect sizes that you would see in higher education, comparing first-year students with seniors. And so then you see we get that broken down by the performance task. So in this particular year for Bethel, students maybe didn't do quite as well. They still did well, but they didn't do quite as well in the performance task as compared to the selected response questions. But again, that performance task, the seniors did much better than the first-year students did. You see that the effect size to be quite large. And then for the selected response questions, the seniors scored at the 93rd percentile. But our first-year students do really well on that too. And then you'll see on the entering academic ability that particularly the group of seniors we had take it seem to be particularly strong on their academic. They're entering academic ability. So it might have just been unique to the students who were selected to participate, even though there was a random selection. They seem to be pretty high on their entering academic ability. Then CLA also provides you with what they consider to be the value added piece. So what's the value added of your institution? And so for this, you'll see a nice regression line that's there, and then basically a scatter plot of all the institution. And so this is for the senior scores. You'll notice if Bethel's is the red dot that's there. And so if your senior scored about what they were expected to, the dot should be pretty close to the regression line that's there, and it is. So the Bethel seniors, they did well. You can see off of that. They're in the upper quadrant here on this particular graph. But they did about as well as what you would expect given their academic entering ability. For the subscores, then, it gives you subscores on the analysis and problem solving, writing effectiveness, and writing mechanics. So you can see that basically this is you'll see the scores of 1 to 6. That's just basically their rubric score that they have there. Not basically, it is their rubric score that they have there. So you'll see not a whole lot of students, whether they're freshmen or seniors, get a score of 6 on any of those particular scales. Most of the students, particularly our Bethel seniors, are scoring at a 4, which is considered to be proficient. Next, you can compare those to the national subscores. So you see nationally of where students were at. Now, what's a little frustrating about what CLA Plus doesn't provide is you kind of actually got to do a little legwork to figure out how your students did compared to the national subscores. And so, as an example here, if we look at Bethel seniors on the analytic and problem-solving subscale, that 73% of our Bethel seniors scored at a 4 or higher off of that. And we look at seniors nationally, only 41% scored at a 4 or higher. And so we feel pretty good about how our seniors did on that particular subscale as compared to seniors nationally. And again, you can do that same type of thing for the other subscales. And then they give us selected response subscores as well. So this is on the scientific and quantitative reasoning, on the critical reading and evaluation, and the critique and argument. And so again, they give us a mean score, and then they tell us basically that interquartile range again, what the score for at the 25th percentile would be and what it would be at the 75th percentile. So you see that for both freshmen and seniors. And then again, you can compare that to the national averages off of this. So again, a frustration for me looking through this is that I would love for them to just give me what's the percentile score for students at our institution. They don't provide that on the subscores. So you just have to make a comparison. So you can see the seniors nationally scored at 546 on the scientific and quantitative reasoning. If I remember right, Bethel's was at 561. So we know that we scored higher than the national average, our students did. But what's problematic is to kind of know, okay, how much larger is that? Is that statistically significant? And they don't give us enough detailed information for us to really know that. We can really only get a sense of we scored higher or we scored lower compared to the national average. So for the CLA Plus, similar to the NESI and the SSI, as a group, review the results, look through to see if there's any weaknesses related to the total score, the performance task, or selected response section, or any of the writing sections appear to be weak, or the subscores on the selected response section as well. And then kind of go through and give your overall impressions of the CLA Plus results.